and welcome back to Living with FASD, a human interest and educational show for those affected by prenatal exposure to alcohol, their loved ones, and anyone else interested in learning more about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. Brought to you by your host, Patty Casper. I'm also your FASD coach. So I have both living and professional experience with FASD, which kind of sets this show apart. And so does my guest, Miss Jodee Kulp. I'm so honored to bring you to the mic and have you join me, the first of many times, I hope, on the Living with FASD podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome to you.
Thank you, Patty. I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you're doing too, because nothing about us without us, right? Isn't that true?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, and some of us have been able to camouflage ourselves a little bit better for a little bit longer time than some of the other people. And luckily, I mean, when you're born into a birth family, that's part of who you are, and it's part of the kids, and it's part of, we're just plain normal. And normal is what normal is. And I think that's families just get kind of used to it. They have a number of wild children, and that's just the family with the wild kids. And it's okay, because they were probably wild parents before they were wild kids.
Isn't that the truth? Still waters run deep, eh?
That's a
so yeah, I just had so many thoughts flit in and out of my mind as you were saying that. It is true. Everyone has a different normal. All of us are normal for who we are. I mean, that phrase, I don't feel like myself today. It kind of gives you that clue that everybody's normal is different, right? Which is the essence of neurodiversity.
Exactly. That's what Liz told me. She said, Mom, I don't get why people think I'm different. I'm normal for me. If I was blind, normal would be blind. And this is the way my brain works, and it's the way it is. And I know for me too. I mean, I fractured my back in 2009 and had pain meds. The pain meds changed the way my brain thought. And boy, I got off of those as fast as I could, because I really like my brain. I like it. I like the way it works. I like the way it thinks. I like I like who I am, and I like how I do things in my own way. So yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if everyone could embrace the way that they are, and not trying to, keep up with the Joneses, not just material stuff, but, to be like everybody else. That's something that those of us who are neurodivergent are so good at doing, is masking.
Yeah.
Right. But masking is such exhausting work to appear normal during the day and then just completely fall apart at the end of the day. Yeah.
I think embracing is a good word. Embracing is the word we're using in our new book, our new feature film.
Right.
All the educational pieces that are going to go with it. And we're doing that on purpose. Embracing is what we want to change. We want culture to embrace neurodiversity for differences and to value them. Wouldn't the world be nice if we looked at all of our differences as opportunities to solve problems and to look at things differently? And I think the thing about FASD that's very complementary is that it doesn't have any stigma against race or creed or size or shape or gender. It doesn't have it. It fits everybody.
Well, because it's every segment of our society uses alcohol.
Yeah.
And therefore, we are represented everywhere.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And I think, especially in our generation, there's a lot more of us than what that we know. It really came out because of the adoptions. The adoptions came out. A lot more adoptions happened during our generation, partly because of the medications that were given to our mothers, and some of those caused infertility, and they caused infertility for many, many women in our generation. And we adopted children, And then you bring in different genetics, you bring in different flavors and shapes and sizes and thoughts,
Yeah.
and they don't always connect, you know.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
There's so many, there's such richness in what you just shared, right? And it really hones in that we are, as a society, we're a tapestry,
Yes.
right? Everyone's color is unique. You know, we're all we have a special and unique place within the whole, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
We
I
are.
really like that. So let's talk about your project that you're working on, the book, and which should be made into a movie,
Yes.
that keys in on embracing. Let's talk about that.
So in 2017, and I recommend you interview Joel because it's his project. His son was diagnosed with FASD, and of course they adopted him. And they didn't know. They knew the mother had drank, but they didn't know what was going on with their son, who is now in his 20s. And he's a filmmaker, and he
Mm-hmm.
decided we really needed a documentary that was very well done, that was very well thought out, that was very well researched, that would get us to the next step, meaning
Mm-hmm.
a new foundation of where the generations before us had taken us to the next jump off point. And I think it was in September, maybe it was October. I've got a daughter that is very sick right now and hoping for a dual organ transplant.
Mm-hmm.
And so they came to me and asked if I would write um, write a bookend, a novel that would complement The Whitest Wall, which was written in 2004, 2005. And at that point, I had used race and creed which were things that we could put our hands around and
Mm-hmm.
expose fetal alcohol or invisible disability. That, 20 years later, was not an appropriate um, idea. So
Yeah.
we pulled a different idea together, and the whole book is neurodiversities. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a compilation of neurodiversities in a little neighborhood, little village that are just regular folk. But
Mm-hmm.
no one would actually know what those people are going through unless they were those people or were close to those people or
Yeah.
got to really understand the dynamics. And there's the main character is a
Mm-hmm.
young man who's 18, and he's pretty much getting kicked out of the house, and his dad and mother have just had it with him.
Mm-hmm.
He's gotten into school and trouble and police and all that kind of stuff, and they've just 18 years and they're done, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
call their brother, who happens to be a sheriff, and they ask him to take him in their little small town and get this kid graduated and make something of himself. And
Mm-hmm.
so they do that. They get a chance to take on a host child and
Mm-hmm.
kinship care, and they they get exposed, experience, and they learn to embrace Zach.
Mm-hmm.
And Zach is um, he's as real as you can get, and parents and doctors and professionals that have read him, see so many of our kids in that
Yeah.
character. And partly
Yeah.
because we used a lot, and we didn't make it from any one poster child. We made it
Right.
from uh from a compilation of so many of us, so many of our
Yeah.
children, so
Yeah.
many.
Yeah.
And that was important. And the normal characters are the characters that are in there. Also,
Mm-hmm.
some have FASD, living jobs, living in the community, having jobs,
Mm-hmm.
participating. Others are veterans coming back from
Mm-hmm.
with post-traumatic stress. In other places, they are
Yeah.
neurotypical people that have no clue what they're
Yeah.
walking into, and the two
Yeah.
systems collide in a big way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's good. But yet in the end, it's because of the neurodiversity that some things are set right and some things are put into place that probably wouldn't have happened if it
Mm-hmm.
didn't take some different kind of thinking. So
Right. Right.
it's a feel good story.
Yeah. I am so honored that you asked me to preview the manuscript, and I started doing that last night, and I am enjoying the heck out of it. So,
Yeah, I've heard there's a lot of laughs and a lot of tears. So
yeah.
that's,
Well, I
if I
haven't
can.
cried yet, but I surely did laugh a lot last night.
Well, isn't that what it's about? If we can't laugh, what can we do, right?
Right. And especially when, I mean, I can recognize myself, I can recognize other, clients that I've had,
Yeah.
other parents that I have worked with, and I just, the whole thing just makes me smile.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's come from my work, obviously, our daughter was diagnosed in 97,
mhm.
and so we're kind of on the cusp of that generation, the first generation that did all the research, and then the next generation. I was the younger in that time. Obviously, I'm not any longer. But she's the one that catapulted me into this field because when we were homeschooling her, and then it was not a normal thing to homeschool at that point. Now it's very
Right.
normal. And we were told she can't learn to read, she can't, all this. She reads fine, she's written 3 books, she's spoken. um because she's living on her, I mean, she's got kidney failure
Mhm.
and type 1 diabetes, and she is living next door in her own home,
Yeah.
doing her own thing, going to dialysis 3 times a week, very, very sick. But she and her significant other, both exposed, are doing life in a
Mhm.
really complicated, complex way.
Mhm. Mhm.
But she's the one that put me there. She said,
Yeah.
"Mom, I want people to know what's like in my brain." Now, of course, I had no idea. I wasn't thinking about me then. I didn't, it didn't occur to me that I could have FSD. Oh, really?
Yeah.
It
Share
didn't.
share if you don't mind. Can you share how
Oh, I
you
will, because it's part
your
of this
journey?
story. Yes.
Yeah.
So she writes the best I can be. And at that point she's just learning to write. I mean,
Mhm.
she's almost 13, and it took her 20 minutes per little paragraph to write that little paragraph. But it was all of her ideas, and they were put on recipe cards, and she wrote them down, and they were valuable. They were
Mhm.
very valuable because it was the first time somebody with FSD actually wrote their own story.
Yeah.
And her therapist said that. She said, this is the first time I've been given a neurodevelopmental patient that is giving me her own history. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
kind of, but it went, and we NPR did a review, and they came to our home, and they did pictures, and that kind of thing. And so Liz and Sam and Carl and I were there, and we gave the interview, and it was published. And I'm speaking, I don't know where I was speaking, but I was speaking on FSD or dogs or something. And and this lady gets up there, and she puts this face, and she says, "Now, this is the adult face of FASD." And my face comes up. And I'm like, "What? I haven't been diagnosed. I own a company.
Yeah.
I I have children. I teach Sunday school.
Yeah.
What do you mean that I
Yeah.
have FSD?" And I went home, and I started thinking about it, and I thought, oh my goodness, my parents, of course, they were, World War II generation, small
Mhm.
town, ice fishing. Dad, they were drinking. I mean, that was part of it.
Yeah.
I witnessed my mom drinking while she was pregnant with my little sister. It was just part of our culture.
You
And
didn't know any better.
no, no. and
Yeah.
and how could you, until the 80s, until the 90s, really, nobody really made statements about it. You had to be in the know
Hmm.
to know.
Yeah.
And we can go back and say, oh, history said this over and over again, but nobody put the pieces together in a big
Right.
way.
Right.
And even today, what I've seen is that it's dismissive. It's not
Hmm.
that people understand it. And there's such a spectrum,
Yeah.
it's, you know, um, from people that run huge corporations to
Hmm.
people that can't even function,
Yeah.
and that their bodies can't even sustain them. and
Yeah.
and so it really depends upon timing, and body type of the mom, and stress on the mom, and the
Yeah.
pregnancy. It's just a lot of
Yeah.
complications. You never
And
know.
any other exposures, and what protective factors were in place,
Yeah.
parenting style, and so many more things, cultural things,
And then for the adopted kids,
yeah.
the breakages,
Hmm.
the whole new family, or for foster kids, the whole new family.
Yeah.
Each one of those trauma points are going to affect
Yeah.
anybody, let alone a child that's knit together differently. It's going to affect them in a different way. And that's what we've seen. We've seen that in the medical community on our medical journey right now. And they are just not prepared. They are not prepared to take on neurodiversity. In fact, one nurse, when we were being checked out last year to come home, she said she's got a note on her son's medical thing: do not hospitalize unless they have given full permission, because she said unless they can be there, they just don't trust the fact that he will be taken care of in a way that they'll give him what he needs to survive.
Yeah. And that's something that everybody needs to think through. And I don't know, this may be a little off topic, I'm not sure.
Right.
I'm curious about your response to this, but one of the hats that I wear, aside from trainer and coach, business owner, I'm also, and foster care social worker, I'm also a hospice chaplain. And in that role, I'm very much, well, when I took that job, I had stumbled across the idea of an end of life, what's the word I want? Doula, an end of life doula.
Sure.
Right. And I had never heard of that concept before. I'm used to thinking of doulas as, bringing babies into the world, right? Midwives. But it really is the same kind of transition, right? From the world of the womb into this world versus from this world to the next. And, helping the patient or the person and the family through the transition. And so I thought, you know what? That dovetails beautifully into the role of a chaplain. So I started going to doula school. One of many things that I started and never finished. A lot of us with FASD do that, but there's no such thing as wasted education. And, one of the things that I really came to appreciate is the importance for every living person to be thoughtful and intentional about what do I want the end times to look like if I can't speak for myself, because there's no scheduling accidents, right?
No.
You can't. You can be as careful as you can, but you can walk out the door and get hit by a bus, right? There's no scheduling accidents. You never know when it's going to face you. And the greatest gift that you can give your family is for them to know your final wishes. And so being very thoughtful about that, I'm thinking, wow, with type 1 diabetes, nobody knows what they're doing. People want to assume that it's just like type 2, but it's
Even
not.
the medical field.
Even the medical field, right?
Yeah.
So, when 7 years ago, when I was battling cancer, I was at a hospital with a reputation for quality care for type 1 diabetes, only to realize, and I chose that hospital and that team of surgeons simply because I wanted to take a vacation from the responsibility of the diabetes. I wanted my only focus to be recovering from surgery.
Right.
And I found out very quickly that all the staff that know what they're doing with type 1 are on the medical floors. Ain't none of them working on the surgical floors. I ended up overriding every single decision for when they would recommend a dose of insulin to cover a meal or whatever. And I gave a lot of informal CEUs. Every time I had to walk a lap around the hospital, I trained a different nurse on the difference between type 1 and type 2. And FASD is just equally misunderstood by the medical field. But in thinking about that and realizing, at this point, I'm 60. At some point, I've got to face reality. I may survive my spouse. And what's going to happen when I can't live on my own, right? I'm predisposed to dementia because of the diabetes. I'm predisposed to Alzheimer's and vascular dementia, and I'm the daughter of someone with Lewy body. So, that's three different kinds.
Yeah.
And if I can't override the decisions that people are wanting to make for me when they haven't a freaking clue, one of my final wishes is that if I get to the point where I cannot I don't have the cognitive capacity to take care of everything for my own survival, then stop all life-saving medications and just let me
Which
die
would be
natural,
insulin.
allow natural death. And that includes the insulin.
Yeah.
And that sounds very morbid, but it will spare somebody the guilt of having killed me.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? Because as caregivers, we do everything we can to provide life.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, Liz, of course, has been in incredible pain and incredible agony and incredible itching. Her body doesn't work the same.
Yeah.
The list of medications that have not worked and that you feel like you're lab ratted on are huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true
T1.
for so many of us, though, right? That medications don't work the way people expect them to.
No, and doctors don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting for us besides having T1, she's got T1 and of course end stage kidney failure. And if things work out, she will, of course, we want a glory miracle, right? Suddenly. But if
Right.
things work out for transplant, she will go for a pancreas and kidney transplant, and
Mm-hmm.
that will be a first through the gate, or one of the first through the gate for people with this hidden disability or for
Yeah.
neurodiversity.
Yeah.
And we're going to fight it. We're going to fight for that until
Yeah.
we can't fight anymore and they finally quit giving us 6 more things to do, which is kind of the way it works.
Yeah.
You get all those 6 done, you say we're done, we're ready to go, and they give us a new list of 6,
Yeah.
they get harder and harder, and she gets sicker and sicker, which is
Mm-hmm.
makes the mother want to be put on Forrest Gump shoes and run around the United States. But I haven't done that yet. But I do know why he did it. I do know why.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
would say I will join you on the road when you pass through my area, except this body is yeah, couldn't do it.
yeah, no,
Couldn't
no,
do it.
I wouldn't do. I mean, I'm obviously
Yeah.
67, so I wouldn't.
Yeah.
If I was faced with what Liz had to be faced with, I would say, hey, get me a cruise ship ticket and let's go to Europe and let's do some fun stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm on my way out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because but she's 37. She's 37 with dreams and hopes and
Mm-hmm.
wanting to live life, and she hasn't had a chance yet.
Yeah.
She really hasn't had a chance. And that's unfair. That's unfair that not that anybody makes a decision to put anybody in that position, but
Right.
the fallout is way more than I ever expected.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
babyhood was hard as an infant, failure to thrive. Toddlerhood was a wild and crazy ride with a kid that was absolutely cognitively, concretely brilliant. And we
Mm-hmm.
thought her brain was just absolutely incredible. And it is, she's
Mm-hmm.
still concretely brilliant. Then grade school came and she couldn't learn to read. And the kid that knew more 3-4 syllable words than any kid I ever knew that was 5 years old ended up sitting in a fetal position at the back of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't read. Finally, at 4th grade, she said, "Mom, I need you to come home. I need to go home. I
Yeah.
need to school."
I need to be done.
And so we
Yeah.
shut my business down, which was almost to $1 million in sales and 22 employees, and came home, and
Wow.
I homeschooled her. And I
Yeah.
decided that I could raise a business again, but I couldn't raise a child. And
Yeah.
what's interesting is that, here I am this many years later, and now, I had been a personal care attendant for her, but even in October, even all that quit. So, it's 60 hours a week of no income. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
not that I'm looking at income, but you do have to pay for heat and
Bills still have
electricity,
to be paid.
mortgage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you still have to pay for those things. And I think there's a lot of parents that are doing it. Christmas was you know what we give for Christmas presents? Dog's got bones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. That's the way life is,
Yeah.
right? You come to those
Yeah.
seasons.
Sometimes all you can do is try and figure out how to wrap a hug.
Hey, hugs. We do good hugs here. Yeah, we do. We do. So
Yeah.
yeah,
But you know, when you've had a really crappy day, nothing beats a hug.
I know. I know. So
Nothing beats a
Sam,
hug.
your husband is just a very gentle, sweet hugger, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
wants me to bear hug him in a way that his bones break. So this is really
Oh,
good because he needs to learn gentleness and I need to just sometimes get all that energy out.
that
Yeah,
works.
it works.
I have one dear friend who's takes hugging to extremes because I'm a touchy feely, I'm a hugger kind of person. But I remember, you know, when she was living here, feeling like, when are you gonna let go?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
hugs just lasted forever.
yeah. Well, we don't have that problem, thank God. Because I feel suffocated and then I run away and that
Right?
wouldn't be good.
I
Yeah,
can't breathe.
yeah, yeah.
But
So you had a
yeah.
couple questions you wanted me to answer about some of my projects. Um,
Yes.
so the
Yeah.
book,
So
yeah,
let's talk a
obviously
little bit more about
the book
which I
is going to be a
thoroughly
book.
enjoyed.
Yeah, it's
Coming
going to be a book.
out,
It's in, huh?
when is it coming out?
Hopefully mid-February.
Awesome.
I've got to go up to Canada and I'm hoping to be able to bring copies. So that will be
Awesome.
nice. Um, And then from there, they'll make a screenplay into it. And then that screenplay will go into the documentary, not at 18, but what happened before. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll take okay, he's 18 trajectorying into adulthood, but the documentary will take, before he was 18, this is all the stuff that his parents put up with that got him sent to his uncles.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then on top of that, there'll be four 20-minute lunch and learns, which
Mm-hmm.
are for medical community, judicial community, um, social services, I think,
Yeah.
education. Maybe I said that. Anyway, there'll be four of them. So, but it's to get the community involved. And if there is money that is made, I mean, at this point, we've got $1 million of in-kind services. In other words, we've donated everything ourselves.
Okay.
Um, uh, if there's it, then we are going to start a social initiative to help the adults so that they can step
Yeah.
up to do some other things,
Yeah.
knowing that it's basically giving hand ups,
Yeah.
to give
Yeah.
them a hand up. So that's that project. A project I had to put aside, which was going really well before the pandemic, was I was running a Expanding Minds with Canines program and building executive functioning with
Mm-hmm.
canines.
Yeah.
In 2007, I decided to try to get 1,000 brains to figure out how they think because of the
Mm-hmm.
anger issue that happens so quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
best place to get brains that escalate quickly and get mad is with dogs. And so I, became a professional dog trainer and the animal behavior person, and have way more than 1,000 brains at this point that I've worked with. Do I know a lot or everything? No, but I knew enough that when before, I think it was 2017, Expanding Minds, what we did is we took teenagers,
Mm-hmm.
even 11-year-olds I would take. So 11-year-olds to anywhere above. So, you know, um, and we built executive functions. So we built, for example, impulse control, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would do things like say, okay, I need you to go take your dog to a corner. And we did this in a store. So it's not like
Mm-hmm. So there's
they're in
lots
a
of distraction.
natural
Mm-hmm.
environment where they have to deal with spontaneity and people and yeah, the
Yeah.
community. They have to deal with the neighbors. And I'd take them to the corner. I said, I need you to jazz up the dog. No, these are good dogs. Okay, these aren't. I need you to jazz up your dog, and then I need to you to put your dog to sleep. Well, the only way you can put a dog to sleep, I mean, unless they're exhausted, is to bring your energy down. So you've
Yeah.
got a mirror.
Yeah.
And so it was, pretty soon everything was quiet and not just the dogs, but the kids were all sleeping in different
Mm-hmm.
corners of the store. And there's a part in the book if you haven't read it, but one of the pieces I do is I play a game with the parents. So
Mm-hmm.
I say, oh, Patty, you know what? I got a game for us to play. No, no, you guys don't get to play. You're there to play with cards. You got a card deck. You're going to play cards with your dogs. And I want you to see if you can play with two other dogs and yourselves. All, so you're doing a teamwork. I'm going to play a game with the moms. They're ear hustling. I mean, they cannot help but ear hustle at this point. So I go to the mom and I say, Patty, I need you to bust your dishes into the sink. Can you think
Mhm.
you can do it? And you go, yeah, I can do it. I said, okay, how about if I start? I start and I say, I pick up my plate, pick up my knife, I pick up my spoon, I pick up my glass, I put it on my plate, I stand up, I turn around and I trip over the dog and I bust all my dishes. And of course, they're listening to this, right? And after three mothers do this, they're like, we can do it. We can do it. Well, you're so dumb. We can make this happen. I'm like, no, you can't. This isn't your game. We're playing this game. And of course they want to play the game, so they do start playing it, but the whole concept is visualization, right?
Mhm.
Can you visualize another, can you plan, can you visualize, can you come up with another strategy that we
Mhm.
haven't come up with? And each mother came up with a slightly different strategy, and each of us fell down and broke the dishes.
Yeah.
And and then of course they learned what the word bust meant instead of bust, but knowing that they would hear it
Yeah.
differently. um
Yeah.
anyway, from that, then they did a lot of visualization. I
Mhm.
had them work with visualization, coming up with ideas, coming up with plans, coming up with strategies, and it was all kinesthetic. It was all,
Yeah.
I need you to build me an obstacle course. Can you go out? Can you go out to my car in the parking lot and take all my gear in? And they're like, I don't know if your moms are going to let you do that, but the moms are like, you're gonna let them go in your car and get the gear out of your car. And I'm like, well, I forgot it. They'd already done obstacle courses with me for weeks, right? And I said, now you've got to set it up because I didn't have time to set up class today. So you've got to make the class happen. But when they
Mhm.
came back, they had to not only have set up the class, but they had to tell me what they set it up, how they set it up, and what their intention was for each obstacle.
Mhm. Mhm.
And of course I knew what each of them meant and elaborated on them. And then they had to try it out without me, right? So now they've
Mhm.
got permission in the store to run around on obstacle courses without, and the parents are like, oh my God. They
So,
did. They did
one
it.
thing that strikes me is you must have had a really good relationship with the store manager.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
That's pretty
I did.
awesome.
I did. And neighborhood. And it's a small, tiny, I mean, it's not a huge store. It's the whole focus is neighborhood. And
Mhm.
um, yeah, it was really nice. It was a fun thing to do,
Mhm.
the pandemic kind of stopped all of that. We
Yeah.
did it outside for a while, but part of the thing with the containment in the store gave us um more reality
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
freedom, but not you didn't have the whole
Yeah.
parking lot, right?
Right. Right.
you you could keep them within a certain distance with doors shut. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
everybody behaved. That was my rules. You had to have fun. That was the first rule. You had to make
Yeah.
sure you're having fun. You had to respect everybody else in there,
Mhm.
and you had to be kind.
Yeah.
And if you could do those three, you weren't going to get in any trouble with me.
Yeah.
If you didn't do those three, then I didn't know what was going to happen, but they didn't want to know.
And so they didn't push it and they didn't find out.
They didn't find out, and
And you
they
didn't
they
find
did.
out either.
No, those dogs learned to play the piano, and they learned blue and yellow and colors, and they learned numbers, and the kids did too. They
Yeah.
played Jenga bones, and we pushed the dogs, but we also really pushed
The
the
kids.
kids.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the dogs were able to do things that people don't think dogs can do, but the kids were able to do them also.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they ended up with, yes, more ESAs than service dogs, but in
Yeah.
some cases
Yeah.
they were mobility dogs. They were
Yeah.
they were well behaved dogs.
So let's clarify that for those who are not in the service dog world. An ESA is an emotional support animal,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And I think most people do not understand the difference between service dog, emotional support animal, and therapy dog
It's true.
and pet.
And pet. Well, and sometimes a pet is a better is good at all three of them, but
Yeah.
maybe not. but not qualified.
Yeah.
So let's
I've had so many people come to me over, oh, let's see, Saley started working for me in 2012. 2000, yeah. And she worked for me all the way up till the pandemic. Um, and I've retired her with the pandemic, but at least once a month, usually more like once a week, someone would come up to me and say, "Oh, where can I get a service dog to put so I can take my dog out with me everywhere?" And, that's something I won't say that I rant about it,
Yeah,
but I definitely educate people,
yeah. Well, I mean, and not every dog can be a service dog. I
right?
mean, you know, yeah, I treat when I work with the kids, I look more at emotional support animal. If
Mm-hmm.
and if the dog shows the propensity to become a service dog, then I push it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the kids do all the AKC stuff. They get the
Yeah.
star puppy and the canine good citizen and the community and the urban canine good citizen, the public access test. But even then, I don't always let them have that dog as a because it's a try thing. With a
Yeah.
kid, it has to be the responsible person has to be responsible, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
relationship is with the kid, is usually
Yeah.
what I look at is
Yeah.
so it's a threesome. And what I've
Yeah.
seen with often with the kids with FASD is it becomes their best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wonderful, but it
Mm-hmm.
becomes the mother's or the father's emotional support animal. And even though they're
Mm.
responsible for the dog in general often becomes theirs.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean
Yeah.
it's the child's, but it really becomes the adult that's
The
in charge.
dog is working for more than just the child.
Yes, he's working for the
Yeah.
family, or she's working for the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my daughter had a DAD too, a diabetic alert dog that she
Mm-hmm.
actually, I had trained her little guy and given him to her. And then when she was on dialysis and got a heart catheter, the dialysis team says, well, you have to get rid of your service dog. And I'm like, I mean, here's this poor young woman. She's not allowed to take her. She loves hair. She loves makeup. She
Mm-hmm.
loves her dog. And she's told she can't shampoo her hair. She can't take baths anymore. And she can't have a service dog. I mean, it's like, good grief, what have you done to me, right? And she can't exercise. And she was doing 3 Chloe Ting exercises a day. So
Oy.
this is a wild thing, right?
Yeah.
And so she gave up all those things because she wanted transplant. And so Taz was trained as a DAD, but that also got rid of her service dog, and she then needed a CGM because obviously now we need something
Mm-hmm.
to catch, which is a
Right.
continuous glucose monitor, so we can watch
Right.
her glucose for T1. And finally, Tazzy was a breeding dog, which is how we were able to get him
Mm-hmm.
and afford him. And he had puppies. And she said, Mom, I want the black girl. And they said I couldn't have one dog, but I can have two, right? And I said, oh, yeah. They didn't say you could have one dog, but they said not one, but they didn't say anything about two. So I think you should take it the puppy.
Yeah.
And she did. And she's the one that actually trained her to become
Mm-hmm.
a diabetic alert dog for her. So the
Mm-hmm.
girl,
Mm-hmm.
she was that. So
Yeah.
our people, and I say our people, are very animal in tuned,
Mm-hmm.
nature in tuned,
Yeah.
humanity in tuned,
Yeah.
um, you know, um, very observant
Mm-hmm.
because that's how they survive is with
And
observing
compassionate.
and compassion and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
honorable and loyal, very
Yeah.
loyal.
Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes the judgment of who to place that loyalty with is a miss. It's a little
Well,
off.
it's
So it's a double-edged sword,
the
right?
double-edged sword. And I mean, naive may be
Yeah.
the word, innocent and naive and
Yeah.
not look like it, right? They
Yeah.
like a little puppy that follows
Yeah.
the person that looks like they're
Yeah.
fun and gets
And isn't that a good reason to have an animal companion? Because dogs are excellent judges of character.
Mhm. They are.
Yeah.
They are.
So with your program, um, you are using the dogs to build executive functioning skills within a child, but
Correct.
do you also train, place, certify service dogs
Yes.
to work with
Occasionally.
FASD.
Occasionally. I just recently did one up in Alaska this
Uh-huh.
last fall. Um, I've placed one with usually with people with neurodiversity
Mm-hmm.
or people that are elderly that need additional support.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what kinds of it, so let me preface the question of what kinds of tasks do you have the service dog doing for FASD by explaining to folks that one of the differences between a therapy dog, an emotional support animal, and a service dog, each classification of animal has different responsibilities and different legal rights.
That's right.
So a therapy dog is basically a volunteer and has legal access to public places in which you would find volunteers, such as library reading programs or daycare centers or senior citizen homes or even hospital units,
Or
um,
judges or courtroom
or courtrooms. Yeah,
or
that's a really
funeral
good one.
or a funeral parlor.
Funeral. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but they are granted access only in the context of their active volunteer work. So a dog fulfilling that role could go into the courthouse or the funeral parlor or the library, but they cannot go to the grocery store or the
Correct.
restaurant, right?
Correct. Correct.
Um, an emotional support animal um, can go with their child, but doesn't necessarily have those legal rights, right? Because they are sort of that combination of best friend and therapist.
Mhm.
Um, but it's up to that for that entity to grant or deny permissions,
Correct.
right? For
Right.
the most part, like airlines will grant permissions. However, they have found so many people abusing it that
Right.
they are now curtailing those permissions back. They're rolling them back up again. And then service animals, service dogs, are trained, they are placed with people who have a documented disability, and they are trained to perform tasks related to that disability. And that is the reason why they have the legal access to go absolutely anywhere that the public can go. So anywhere that their disabled person can go, the service dog goes as well,
Correct.
other than an operating room or a burn unit. They can go anywhere.
I don't know if they can go into dialysis. I have never seen a dog in dialysis at this point, but the pandemic
Yeah,
is here. So, we're just starting to get our privileges back as
yeah,
people that are
yeah,
outside of the system.
yeah. And they might not be because it's
But they
that
can,
it
yeah, they
depends on
can
the
go to
level of
church.
sterility, right?
Right. They can go to churches, they can go to
Yeah,
synagogues, they can go to
yeah,
mosques. Well, I mean, most Muslims don't have dogs, but um
yeah,
they so let's talk about some of the tasks that a dog does.
yeah, yeah.
Um
How can they serve our, the listeners or viewers
all
who
right.
are thinking, wow, I could really use that kind of support? What kinds of things, at least in the diabetic alert dog world, Um, I was a volunteer for the company that placed Saley with me, and I would answer a lot of questions. But so many people I found had no clue as to the enormously broad scope of tasks that the dogs could be trained for. And you can't ask for something if you don't know to be able to ask for it.
Right. So let's say it's a medical alert dog, and there are a number of things a dog can do for medical alert. They can alert for sugar or
Mhm.
glucose. They can alert for hypertension. They can alert for for seizures. So they can alert for any of those
Yeah.
kind of
And
things.
POTS,
And POTS.
yeah,
So
the
are there
blood
any other
pressure
ones?
drops.
Blood pressure drops, yes.
Yeah. Hearing.
Well, and then there's a hearing impaired dog, which would pick up noises for us, or blind,
right?
or a
The
seeing eye
blind.
dog, which
Mm-hmm.
would be able to help us with that.
Yeah.
There's mobility dogs. Mobility
Mm-hmm.
dogs would help brace, help walk across the street, allow you to walk with the dog. Usually there's a harness and a halter and a I don't know what you call it. It's a handle that you can,
Mm-hmm.
that helps you with that. And those are usually some pretty strong dogs.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not they're not they're pretty hefty. And I don't mean
Right.
hefty like weighty, but they're muscular. They're usually dogs that have
Yeah.
some strength on them.
Right. Right.
And then you have the dogs that are psychiatric dogs, and those dogs are dogs that are there's a variety of them, and it's a field that goes up and down. Is all I can say. It's a positive thing, and then it's a not positive thing, and then it's a so let's talk about some of the things it can do for our kids. One
Mm-hmm.
of the things it does for the neurodivergent kids is it can be younger children can be tethered, which means
Mm-hmm.
the dog is tethered to them. And so these kids that are bolters, they're not going to
Yeah.
bolt because the dog is taught to brace. So if the
Yeah.
kid decides to bolt in the store, the dog actually stands in a very good bracing position or sits, and that child
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Let's say it's a child that erupts or it's a post-traumatic stress trauma situation. We all have behaviors we have prior to going into our trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's very quick and instantaneous and you can't just get there. But other times there's a series of behaviors. So if I was a veteran and I did this, and that was my signal that said I'm going to zone out, or I'm just having trouble right now.
Yeah.
You would train the dog as that would be the cue, right? So if the dog
Mm-hmm.
saw that, then the dog would behave in a task that would be an interrupt. And the interrupt would be what the person needed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a dog putting paws on shoulders. It could be a dog coming under and licking the face. It could
Mm-hmm.
be a dog nuzzling. It could be a dog just coming to the lap or putting their head on their shoulder. But the dog
Mm-hmm.
is trained with the cue to behave in a way that's what would happen. Those training behaviors would happen hundreds of times without having the real situation happen. Just like a
Yeah.
diabetic alert, that would be trained with the scent. And
Mm-hmm.
some dogs just get it. Some dogs just get
Yeah.
it, and especially if you imprint a dog with a medical alert scent when they're still nursing, you can
Yeah.
get some things happening early. But in the psychiatric world, you don't.
Right.
Deep pressure is another one
Mm-hmm.
where a child might go like this and that, or another hand signal, or the parent would indicate, and the dog would go and maybe put his body over the legs of a child, or
Mm-hmm.
actually climb on top of a child.
Mm-hmm.
And we're
And
not talking
be their weighted vest.
yes, and they're not always big dogs. I mean, just
Yeah.
because we think of labs and retrievers, we've got, tiny little guys that are doing the work of big guys. And
Mm-hmm.
with Liz's two toy poodles, what we've actually seen is when she has migraines, they actually lay over her head.
Oh, wow.
So they come and they lay like, I don't know, like on her head, and they just lay. They can feel that. They can feel
Mm-hmm.
that pain and take care of it. But basically what a service dog is they have to do three tasks you cannot do by yourself without
Yeah.
the dog.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, Patty, you have the same task as Liz. Even though you're a T1, it could be a different set of
Right.
things that Liz needs that you don't need. In some
Yeah.
cases,
Yeah.
opening the door to the fridge and getting out the Sprite and bringing the can of Sprite to the person.
Staley can do that.
Yes.
At least she could when we had a side by side.
Yeah.
But we just replaced our appliances, and so now we have the freezer at the bottom,
Uh-huh.
and then a drawer for like your cheeses and meats,
Yeah.
and then at the top there's the juice. She's yeah, no.
But that's an important point, is that dogs learn to do things with one set of rules, with one
Mm-hmm.
set of equipment, with one set of people, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is you change that one set, and if you don't bridge it,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't reteach it,
Yeah.
it looks like the dog's unable, where the dog is perfectly capable of learning another, making a
Yeah.
transition,
Yeah.
but it has to be trained all over again. And it can be
Yeah.
something little,
Yeah.
or in another case, Dogs get traumatized just like people.
Mm-hmm.
We had
Yeah.
the first FASD service dog I placed, and I placed the very first one in the United States. Um, and most people don't know that, but then after that, it became Donnie Winokur got Chancer, and I was part of that, and it was
I
wonderful.
love that book.
I know.
That's how I
Yeah.
found you.
Oh, funny. Well, Chancer's wonderful, and Donnie's wonderful, and their family's good friends of ours, and we've become very close.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I really felt like I'd failed
Mm-hmm.
because I had this dream that, dogs could do this, and this guy could do anything. I mean, he would go to the bowling alley and sit in the bowling alley, and he would go and sit in the very front seat of the movie theater and watch war movies. And he would, get on the bus, and he'd get on the train, and he'd go to the ATM, and he had this skill where he'd turn around and smile at people. Well, so the problem is that and he was an independent adult. So as an independent adult, he ended up becoming independent. But
Mm-hmm.
the dog ended up being overwhelmed
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah.
And it took 5 years to rehabilitate the dog.
Yeah.
So not that and I think at that point it was like we've got to do three people. It can't be, there's got to be a break for the dog.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be um supports for the animal.
Yeah.
Um, and what is it? You never fail. You just keep trying, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
putting the Chancer program into Four Paws for Ability, and they did it. And now I think, Jeremy's got his own program. So there's multiple other programs out there, and there's a program in Canada and of
Mm-hmm.
course, there's one in England now. Yeah,
Yeah.
some really good stuff has happened. I realized what you could teach a dog
Yeah.
from Limey.
Yeah.
Limey could do it. He'd ride bike. I mean, not ride on the bike, but he'd ride alongside the bike. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now Saley was probably 20 minutes ahead of the CGM.
Wow.
Um, and she would do things just instinctively. Like if she knew, as social workers, we're out in the field all the time. But if she knew I was going to have a low, she would
Mhm.
refuse to get in the car.
Oh, interesting.
She's
What was her
nope.
range? What was her range?
She was trained to my target of 100 to 150,
Oh, okay.
which
That's
is
good.
very
That's
narrow.
doable. That's
Hmm.
very narrow. That's very narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of
Yeah.
course, now with the advanced CGM technology, the range is now broader. It's 80 to 180, and she's still constantly alerting, Mom, fix it. And I'm just
Like,
like,
yeah.
it's a good check.
It is a good
Yeah.
check. Yeah.
So
Well,
she gives me what I call the Darth Vader death stare. Like, fix it now.
yeah, I know. Or you're going to get in trouble, right? I know.
Right.
I know. Well, and think about it. I mean, the CGM is usually 6 minutes behind the meter. So you
Hmm.
got if you do the blood
Yeah.
meter, you're about 6 to 10 minutes, and the dog's 10 minutes ahead of that. So,
Yeah.
they've got their smell. You can't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I am so delighted that dogs have a role with FASD, for those supports. And it sounds like a lot of it is more of the psychiatric end of things, although there's definitely a role for the medical dogs because, hello, 428 comorbid conditions,
That's true.
you
And
know.
many of them are multiple. It's not
Hmm.
just to get one, you get a multiple of them,
Yeah,
and they come as you get older too. So
yeah,
that I think you have to think about the body as working so hard all the
mhm,
time that yeah,
yeah,
it wears out faster.
yeah, yeah. I can attest to that. Um, Yeah. I'm just delighted to have you on and talking about that. And I hope that listeners will be encouraged to take stock of what their struggles are. And are you in a position, Jodee, where you can help field questions that listeners or viewers might have as to this is what's going on for me? Could a
Yeah,
dog be helpful?
yeah, I can do that. I can do that.
Okay.
Um, you know, right now my week is 60 hours of cares and, you know, care coordination, and it's just pretty it's overwhelming. I
Yeah.
mean, I thought, you know, you go through this FASD journey and you think, oh, the teen years, oh my goodness, we're not going to ever get through them, you know. And of course there's all the things that happen, right? And then you go through the adult transition, and you're like, we're never going to get through that. And then you finally get this little piece. It's like, oh my gosh, I got an adult and this is like so
Yeah.
wonderful. And then we crash into these medical things that are not just little,
Hmm.
but they're
Huge.
huge,
Yeah.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I was talking with Jared Brown a couple weeks back, and I'm trying to think if I think that episode, it might even be this week's episode. Um, but we were talking about how it's not that we age faster, but we get the disease processes of older people at a much younger age.
that is true for some of, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you're exactly right. It's that, we're working overtime in every way.
Yeah.
And so it just
Yeah.
takes its toll.
So there's one more thing I'd like to say, and this is a hard thing, you know, with when you have a 37-year-old in the medical field, right? And if my mom and dad, of course, have passed now, but if they were going into the doctor, I would make sure that somebody was there with them as a supporter, right?
Hmm.
Because when you get more complicated situations, you need that support, whether it's
Yeah.
just another set of ears or eyes or note taking or,
Yeah.
you know, whatever. And because you're not going into a peer situation, right? You're going into
Right.
an unequal situation of
Right.
of someone. If a doctor came to me and asked about dog behavior, we would not be on an equal term. If I
Yeah.
go into a doctor, I'm not on equal terms with the doctor, right? And
Yeah.
and my daughter's on even less of an equal term than that. And
Hmm.
so when she's dismissed of, well, why do you need your mommy?
Hmm.
It's like, this isn't mommy. I'm her mom. I'm her parent, but I don't do that job. I'm her friend.
Yeah.
I'm her supporter.
Her
I am
advocate.
there as her cognitive
Hmm.
translator. I am there to take those gems that I might find that you're saying and research down the rabbit hole to see if I can find an answer for you or find another professional to help us. Um,
Hmm.
and and it's not about, I mean, Patty, if you or I were friends, they wouldn't judge you or I to have brought a friend in to do it.
Right.
Yet to have a 37-year-old to have another
Yeah.
person with, there's this inaccountability. And I
Yeah.
like, you know, we don't leave her at the hospital. We sleep there.
Yeah.
We don't, we've learned we can't,
Yeah.
especially with T1.
Yeah.
With T1, I monitor that CGM all night long if I'm at the
Yeah.
hospital because
Yeah.
we can't, yeah, we couldn't risk it.
Yeah. Yeah. It that can be terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I remember one time when I was a truck stop chaplain and I got pneumonia, and the person that I traveled with, um, I made sure that that person was with me in the hospital, and the nurse was like, I woke up to a needle already in my arm, giving me like 18 units of insulin in the middle of the night, and I'm like, that woke me right up, and I'm like, what the H do you think you're doing?
We don't
Well, your
know.
sugar's such and such, and according to the sliding scale, which of course, hasn't been used in type 1 since 1980, this is what you need. And I'm like, you better be checking on me every 15 minutes
Yeah.
because this time of night, that much insulin, you're going to kill me.
And it'll go quick.
It'll go quick. And
And I'll
I'm
just go
so
to sleep
grateful
and you,
yeah,
yeah. And
dead in bed syndrome was a phrase developed for type 1 diabetes. And I was so grateful that my companion was with me, and could keep an alert because that was before CGMs,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Well, we keep an alert. You know,
Hmm.
I I've been I've been admonished for carrying insulin to the hospital because they'll run it too high, and too high will get you into DKA. And I know where her pivot point is. And
Yeah.
I have I have hot tamales, and I have honey in my purse, and because I know that she can
Yeah.
go from 100 to 50 or 40
At the
in
drop of a hat.
in 15 minutes. And then the
Yeah.
problem is when you administer, by the time the nursing team comes, she's back up to 115, and you're saying,
Yeah.
no, we need some additional carbs here. And then if you've got what she's dealing with, a celiac on top of it, and then you've got
Oh,
renal disease on top of that, and you're allergic
yeah.
to aspartame, you have got yourself a diet that the hospital can't manage.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
and it becomes quite the adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, you brought up a really good point. When she is dismissed, right?
Yes.
It's
Oh,
it's that attitude toward anyone who's seen as neurodivergent, to dismiss us. It's very placating. Um, it's very insulting.
yes. Or to treat her
You
like a
know,
child.
yeah,
Or, I mean, to come on her like you do a
patronizing. That's the word I was
a
looking for.
3-year-old,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I have marched out of the room and shut the door and had a discussion on FASD with some professionals that have had to learn a little bit of quick education because um, they needed to know that, it's not me being overbearing or a helicopter parent,
Yeah.
or because I give her her freedom.
Hmm.
She's an adult. She has her
Hmm.
freedom to be her own woman.
Yeah.
But there are times that that freedom in the medical field is going to kill her.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and at that point, if I'm the watchman, then then they have to deal with the watchman.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That patronizing bit is, it's part of the stigma that we
yeah.
have, when we're living with FASD. And I think so much of that stigma is driven by misinformation or
Mhm.
old information,
Mhm.
and by people that think that the 10-minute lecture they had in medical school or nursing school or wherever, is sufficient.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it's all about the face, right? Nothing else.
it is.
um,
As I found out, it's all about the face.
yeah, yeah. Uh, don't get me started.
Uh,
So, what in and I'm trying to think of what it was when we talked earlier about that really piqued my interest on that, because there's so much stigma out there. There's so much misinformation. Um, but none of us know what we didn't know until we learn it.
and we
Right?
that's what I hope Embracing Zach does, is
Yeah.
that it writes on the hearts of the people the reality. And you'll see as you go there, it's not just neurodiversity of Zach. There's other people that are
Hmm.
neurodivergent there too that are wonderful. And um yeah,
Yeah.
and I need to do a shout out. I have the two editors that I had. I've got sub editors too, but the two people that came aboard to edit, one is a teacher that was been a teacher for 40 years and has had a number of FSD kids, but not knowing it until she got Mac
Hmm.
ear check. And this is the furry teacher, the teacher that we did Furry the Penguin with, and the whole furry curriculum and all that kind of thing for children. And the other one was Antonia Rath Rathmar, Rath
Hmm.
Rathson. And she's an art therapist and worked with thousands and thousands of people. And she's in France.
Hmm.
So she was in Canada and she was in the US, and now she's in France. And what fun we've had. We've been
Hmm.
it's been 2 months of playing. We've just,
Yeah.
we've been playing with the tapestry of the manuscript and the words, and
Yeah.
I can't own it. It's, I got
It's a
to do this.
collaboration.
I got to do the story. I got to come up with the thing. But, if one of the editors, Marcia, said one day, she said, "Oh, I can just see that character." And
Hmm.
it was Mr. Mason. And I said, well, create Mr. Mason for me. I need him created. And she just took him and made him into this just incredible character. And Antonia lives with her support person, and her significant other has Asperger's.
Mhm.
And so, she had an insight into that, which was absolutely brilliant. And like I said, we just played. We played for,
Yeah.
I started it in Alaska when I was with Deb Evanson, and
Mhm.
her new service dog, Sadie, is just awesome. And I went up there to certify her. And then I started there thinking about it because I needed time
Mhm.
to develop the characters in my heart before and the storyline before I
Mhm.
could do it. And I had two
Yeah.
weeks without Liz. So that gave me those 2 weeks to just kind of
Yeah.
begin it. And then from
Yeah.
there, I came home and I just said, I just got to sit down and do it. And
Yeah.
um, they jumped on board with me, and the three of us really, really played. And so you'll see that it may have been by me, but it's with,
Yeah.
Joel and Justin and Marcia and
Yeah. Yeah.
and Antonia, because without Marcia and Antonia, it wouldn't be there. It wouldn't be there in
Yeah.
the way it is. And it had to represent neurotypical
Yeah.
and neurodivergent. It had to represent
Mhm.
them all. It had to be real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we did as real as we can,
I
as we can do.
so like I had to wait until my mom went to bed last night before I could start reading it. The audience well knows that I'm her caregiver. She's 91 with Lewy body dementia.
Oh,
Um, and on the weekends, it's all about playing cards with her. Um,
and it's a memory.
exactly. That's how I test how she's doing
Yeah.
with her cognitive abilities. And there are days where it's a game she's played for 80 years. And the days that she can't remember even the basic rules of it, those are the scary days for me.
Yeah. Then you got to make up new
Won-
rules.
wondering if she's going to come back from that, right?
Yes, I
Um,
understand those days.
yeah, fortunately she's come back every time. But once she went to bed last night, I sat at the computer and I started reading the manuscript, and it's just delightful. And I can see the characters
And
in
that's what we
my
wanted.
mind. It's
And
so well written.
what you need to know is I mean, obviously there's gender with the characters, but there's no character description. There's
Hmm.
there and we did that on purpose. Mr. Mantha has a little bit of character description, and a couple teachers do, but in general, the descriptions are in the reader's mind, and we did that
Hmm.
on purpose so that
Hmm.
that the videographers can pick and choose and not have to follow my script, but that the
Yeah,
characters come so alive
yeah,
that
yeah,
we own them. They're
yeah,
our neighbors, they're our
yeah,
brothers and sisters and our friends, and that's kind of
yeah. I love that concept. That's genius on your part. I'm curious, most of my reading, at least 90% of what I read is on audiobook.
yeah, us too.
Um,
Us too.
so
My
will
husband and I
you,
go to sleep at night listening to an audiobook.
yeah,
That's
so
our
will you be doing a version
Yeah,
of
and
this on audiobook?
I will. And I don't know if I should read it or if I should. I tend to like male voice reading because men tend to like listening to men. I mean, women will listen to men or women, but men tend to like to listen to men.
Okay.
Um, so I don't know. I haven't found a voice that I like.
Hmm.
It's got to be the right voice.
Yeah.
I guess what I'll do
Yeah.
is wait till Justin puts together the screenplay and then sees what happens. We've been
Hmm.
all doing it differently. I've been reading it aloud to Liz, who just got a kick out of it and first laughed. We haven't heard her laugh like that for so long. And that
Good.
was really nice. And what you were saying is that with your mother, I've been there on those days
Hmm.
when there's nothing. Last year, she was just learning to sit up. This was the day she came home, December 26th, and she had collapsed to to um to not have any body parts work except the middle of her core.
Oh,
So she had no words. Could not move her hands. She could not move her feet. She could not walk. She could not turn over.
wow.
She had no bladder control. It was a horrible situation. And
It's a nightmare.
what I put on Facebook is all the glimmers because humanity can't handle what we've been through.
Yeah.
But but she was laughing, and if she can laugh at it, that gives me joy in my heart because she
Yeah.
hasn't laughed. She hasn't laughed, and
Yeah.
um, she only had 3 words last year. She had help, ice, and mom.
Oh,
That was it. And
yeah.
she's talking, she's walking.
Yeah.
You know,
What a
those
miracle.
she's going for the transplant. That's what
Yeah.
we're going for.
Yeah.
And I don't know anybody that's fought harder than she's fought for it. But
Yeah.
even to the point of August 26th, they got T-boned in my car, trashing out my car, with a girl that was texting on her phone. They had gone to get cereal and milk, and she T-boned them, and she lost her vision.
Oh man.
And she's an artist. So, you just keep saying, God, how many more?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Has your
When?
vision come back?
Intermittently, and it's been very interesting. At first, she only had blue, green, and purple were all the same color. They were all one color. She could see pink. She's been able to see pink. She's been able to see black and white. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it comes and goes, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it will return. Um, it's not where it was.
Yeah.
But nothing is where it was. She
So,
went
so
from,
let me just place this call to action for everyone watching or listening to this episode. Please be praying for Liz
yeah, because we're gonna go for
for
it.
for the transplant and also the return of her vision.
Yeah.
Um,
And
you
return
know,
everything. She wants to write
yeah,
another book. She wants to go back speaking. She
yeah,
wants to she said, I want to take this mess and make it a message. This
yeah,
this is more
yeah,
than than just me, Mom. And
yeah,
but I can't,
yeah,
I mean, you've just seen a little tip of the iceberg, but it's
yeah.
been
Well, I definitely want to have you and Liz together on
yes,
this program. Um,
yes.
I
You will
definitely
love
want
her.
that.
She, she had She she solves problems. She's a problem solver, and she solves them
Mhm.
in ways that people, I don't know, turns their head around 360 degrees like an owl. But you know what? She
Mhm.
solves the problem because she thinks differently, and I
Yeah,
got to give her credit for that.
yeah, yeah. And but that so many of us do that,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Because we have to, because we don't think the way the rest of the world thinks. We do process information differently, so we meet challenges differently. And
yeah,
it does take that creativity and that outside of the box approach to life
yeah,
just to make it. I mean, people like you and I, we have some of the protective factors we have is our intelligence.
yeah,
But that, intelligence aside, that means we're book smart, but it takes more than that to navigate life successfully.
yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we didn't give our own parents a run for their money. you know
Not me.
I'm glad for my mother's sake that yeah, there weren't cell phones back then when I was in those transitional years, because she didn't need any more worry than she had
Yeah.
from the diabetes. So
Well, and the diabetes seems like enough. I mean, it seems like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a big thing. I mean, people
yeah,
that have children that have T1 know the kind of
yeah,
attentiveness they have all the time.
yeah,
And you add that to all the other pieces that we're dealing with. It's like, how many more?
yeah.
I was speaking that out, man. You know what? Anymore, I'm done.
Right. I mean, my mom had no clue that I was neurodivergent, right? Or her anxiety probably would have been really off the roof. Um, but she kept me alive when no one thought that was possible. I was
Yeah,
supposed to be dead when I was 8. Um, I'm still here,
you're still here.
42 years past my expiration date. And no, 52 years past my expiration date. Um, but she did that with no technology.
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
no technology.
I know
And
you look at some of these moms that have done some of these things. You know, the year checks deal with celiac, and celiac's complicated too, right? And
yeah.
her mom, you know, dealt with it herself and then dealt with the children. Or you deal
Mm-hmm.
with Antonia, her parents, she has Ehlers in her family, and they know things that the doctors don't know because they had to figure it out.
Yeah.
If we could all come together and be respected for who we are,
Yeah.
then the medical field
Yeah.
would be able to go so much further, so much faster.
Yeah. You know, I said to Dr. Jones when I had him on the podcast a few weeks ago. So it was probably about 2 months ago that we sat down to record the episode, and and I said, you know, it's easy for those of us to complain about feeling gaslit, you know, that the medical community doesn't see us, doesn't get us, doesn't understand us, they dismiss us, when our concerns are valid, our viewpoints are valid, and so is our knowledge of self,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, but to be fair, and he's so cute, he said, you don't have to be fair to us. But to be fair, there's so much they have to learn.
I
And
know,
granted, doctors go to school longer than any other profession,
I know.
but there's still so much they need to learn compared to the very short period of time that they're in school.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that's why they get such a brief microcosm of type 1 diabetes or FASD or 1,000 other things.
Well, and hospitals are geared for acute, not chronic.
Right,
And so
right.
often
And
our
when
people have,
something is both, it's really confusing.
then they don't know what to do. Well, no, then they go to the database and they
Yeah.
read through, they put in the data and they come out and then they come back with this idea and they give it to you, which you've already tried 7 times because the other 7 hospitalists have gone and put in the same data and come back with it. And you say,
Mm-hmm.
no, it didn't work. It didn't work last
Right,
week. It didn't work the
right.
week before, but it's
Yeah.
this is, you know, and
Let's get off the habit trail wheel, please.
right, right.
Try
Let's
something
try.
different.
Let's try. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
sometimes they do that. They get
Yeah.
off and they come down to, you know, where you're actually sitting together saying, okay, we got to figure this out.
Yeah.
It's no longer, you
Yeah.
know, I don't know what to do. We got to figure this out. And
I so treasure providers, whether they are psychologists or medical professionals, it doesn't matter, or social workers. I so treasure the providers who embrace insatiable curiosity.
yes, exactly. Exactly. Which
That will
is why
take people so
which
far.
is why we use the teaching school hospital because it's like um yeah,
Yeah.
and it's still, you know, but you can at least use the line. Look, this is a teaching hospital, and we came to teach you. You know,
Right? Right? Like I was, you know, when I was fighting my cancer 7 years ago, I chose a teaching hospital for diabetes for type 1. You know, and I found myself educating the entire staff,
I
the
know,
surgical
I know,
unit, about, you know, why I count carbs, why I don't use a sliding scale.
I know,
I and
I know.
and I should have gotten a discount for all the CEUs I could have handed out.
Oh, and that's what we're working on. We're working on CEUs for our educational pieces. So there will
Awesome.
be CEUs with that. Carl
Awesome.
Young is working on that for us. So a lot of people in the community have
Yeah.
stepped up to the plate for this
Yeah.
project, and I hope we can. Yeah, we're just gonna now we're fundraising. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, we're at the point where we've pretty much done everything we can do.
Yeah.
Where yeah, the dogs got bones for Christmas, right? So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that's kind of where the team is at this
Yeah.
point, and now it's going for
Yeah.
fundraisers.
I know that Justin Shepard is working on a longer full-length documentary of, you know, he did the FASD project.
Yeah,
So I'm excited for that. He's also in that fundraising stage. So I'm excited for both of these. Um, and then there's also, we're at the same place with a documentary on Lewy body.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Because like FASD, it's usually misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
Um, but diagnosis matters, right?
Well, it gives you a step. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what you have to say is that, diagnosis doesn't say that you or I are alike.
Mm-hmm.
It says that okay, there's a flag here. It just says, hey, let's look at this differently.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work one way, let's not try to put the shoe on if it's a size 3 for a size 8 foot. Let's
Right.
get a different
Right.
shoe.
Yeah.
And
I
that
love
that's
that analogy.
that's what kind of I think we have to look at is that we we all we all are different. We've
Yeah.
all been affected differently. And
Yeah.
I and thank God the adults
Yeah.
have become empowered.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Yeah.
was my goal back in 2013 was to empower the adults with the ability to go out
Yeah.
and speak and that's what Red Shoes was all about. How can
Yeah.
I, what can I do to
Yeah.
get that
And
group?
that's where my book, is targeted for adults,
Yeah.
because one of the researchers that I was looking at when I was pulling the stats, because my preface is all the educational statistics, right? Um, one of the researchers said, "Thank God for the 99.9% of adults living with FASD who don't know it."
Yeah.
Right? Um, you know, that means our diagnostic rate is 0.01%, which is
Well, it takes
beyond
a long time.
abysmal.
Yeah.
You know, that means there's over 15 million of us just in this country
Yeah.
wandering around, not understanding that our struggles in life, whether it's addictions, whether it's inability to keep a job, no, whether it's inability to stay in a stable relationship, whatever it is tied to prenatal brain injuries.
Yeah.
It's not our fault. We're not defective. We're not broken. There's nothing pathological about us. We're just wired differently.
Yeah. Well, and once you accept that, then you can work with it, then
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. So that's
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I have two brothers. The the older one, I think my parents were both drinking much heartier early in the marriage before three kids kind of forced them to settle down somewhat. Um, he has a, agreed, yeah, I think this has something to do with my struggles in life. And then the middle brother, he's like, well, what makes you want to believe that? I'm just finding an excuse, right? Um, or something to foist blame on my parent for. And that's not it at all. It's it's been such a gift, right? When I figured it out, I was 56 and it felt like, here I am with my history of playing cards with my mom for, 55 years. Someone took my deck of cards of life and shuffled them and gave them back. And the way that they gave them back just makes more sense.
yeah.
You know, it makes so much more sense. And it's like, I don't have to beat myself up anymore or feel so ashamed of my poor decision making when I was in college at 17, right? 18, 19. When I was not able to properly interpret people's real intent,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it takes
That's
the shame away.
for
You know,
us. Yes.
yeah, for us, it takes the shame away. It helps us understand and have self-compassion instead of self-judgment. Because when parents don't understand their kids and why they're doing the things that they're doing, they tend to judge that, right? you're stupid, you're worthless, you're not going anywhere in life, and all this negative messaging that you hear in the house, you hear it at school, you hear it in your first jobs, and you end up internalizing it
Yeah.
and getting the understanding that it's prenatal brain injury.
So you were a social worker,
Mm-hmm.
and I owned a company and had employees, and we were foster parents. And if I go back through, and of course we had high schools and other schools that we've gone to, and if I go back and I look, I know a number of my employees.
Mm-hmm.
I know a number of my foster kids. I know a number of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's okay. And I bet you as a social worker can say, I mean, and there's times that things have been done with or for people that if you knew that, I mean, if I would have known one of my foster kids, if I would have understood that, we would have handled it a whole different way.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Absolutely.
um,
Absolutely.
if we would have known with Liz, would we have done it differently? Yes, I think we would have
Mm-hmm.
not seen the concrete intelligence as so brilliant because it was and it still is. And she just never got abstract reasoning.
Yeah.
But I think I would have put in neurodevelopment right away.
Yeah.
Instead of building on the concrete brilliance, I would have worked on primitive reflexes,
Mm-hmm.
so that she could, and the moral reflex, which is this, that could be
Yeah.
gone instead
Yeah.
of being gone at 14, it could have been gone at 2. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I would have done, knowing that, I would have done the things that needed to be done for
Yeah.
infants and
Yeah.
had that developmental piece put
Yeah.
together, you
And
know.
and that's yet another reason why diagnosis is so important. The earlier the diagnosis is made, the more accommodations can be put in place and the more secondary disabilities can be avoided.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We can
And
avoid the anxiety, we can avoid the depression, we can avoid all the horrible outcomes that Google tells parents they're going to face.
or the struggle that parents face,
Mm-hmm.
misunderstanding the kids, because
Mm-hmm.
more triggers and the more buttons
Yeah.
you push, the more buttons
Yeah.
they push, and they
Yeah.
have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So, it's not like the parents are going to have it easy.
Yeah.
The kids have nothing to lose. They will push and push and push because they
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
And it's the parenting that has to change to make that difference,
Yeah.
as hard as it is. And that's what Joel
Yeah.
talks about, is that, he changed his parenting in order to fit it. Now, on my
Mm-hmm.
case, I parented like a person with FASD, so it didn't it didn't hurt her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she came back with a spirit so intact. I mean, it's making the
Yeah.
medical community crazy because she'll say, "Make this make sense. I don't understand what you said."
Yeah.
You and they're like, they say it again, and she says, "I want you to make this make sense." And
Yeah.
they get very frustrated because they have to bring it, and it's
Yeah.
not even, it's not what I would say dumbing it down. It's speaking clearly. It's
Yeah.
speaking
Yeah.
clarity and having a bridge that can
Mm-hmm.
connect to something that makes sense to allow the next thing to
Right.
make sense.
Right.
Um,
And it's not, and that's it exactly. It's not talking down
no,
to us. It's explaining things differently so that
yeah,
we can grasp it.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, we have,
We've gone
I
over.
think, gone way over an hour. So I hope people have enjoyed this conversation as much as
Yes.
I have. It has been delightful, Jodee. And I would love, I let's set up a time when we finish recording. Let's set up a time for you and your daughter to come on
Yeah,
together.
let's bring Liz on before,
Yeah.
I'll talk to her. I'm going over there to do massage now, and
Oh, I'm jealous.
I know. Yeah.
I need a massage.
Well, yeah. She wishes she didn't need the massage. I think she wishes that we, can do
Yeah.
it. So, but I'll go over
Anyway,
do
so
that for her.
yeah, we'll get back in touch on that real soon. But for all the listeners and viewers out there, thank you for joining me for another episode of Living with FASD. if you have questions for Jodee about getting a service dog, or about whether or not her program would be beneficial for building executive functioning, you can ask those questions to her or of her in care of my Gmail account, which is livingwithfasdpodcast@gmail.com. Right? So it's the name of the show, Living with FASD Podcast@gmail.com. And I will, as the questions come in, I will forward them on to Jodee. And then when she comes on with Liz, we'll have her address your questions.
Oh, good idea. Good
Yeah,
idea.
I think that's the easiest way of handling it.
Yeah.
And um, if you have a loved one who has struggled in life and always felt different, right, or somewhat defective, whatever the case is, if there was drinking at all in their background, if they're of our generation, 50s, 60s, then there probably was, right? Once prohibition was over, that's what people did. They drank. My book is for them, right? Or for you to share with them, because it shows the varied way that people living an adult life with FASD have been impacted. So, it's a gift of self-discovery. And then, because this will be airing the first week of February, and Jodee, your book is out in mid-February.
Right.
Everyone be looking for the book Embracing Zach, right?
Yes, Embracing Zach, and we need reviews. Yes.
Yes. So, let's support the work that Jodee and so many others have put into this. And I'm really looking forward to it. I have the feeling, and like I said, I've only read 7 chapters, but I have the feeling it's going to be on my must-read list of recommended readings.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. So
you did read late in the night if you got to chapter 7.
I couldn't walk away from it. My husband put a movie in and I thought, well, I'm going to go into the office and just do this one thing. And the next thing I know, the movie's over already. So it's very difficult to force myself to walk away from the computer and actually go to bed.
Well, now you got something fun to do. So you
yeah.
can look forward to another 42 chapters.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to finishing that and providing that review for you. But everybody, please, let's support Jodee and all those who partnered with her in this creation. And, write any questions you have for her that are service dog related, ESA, emotional support animal related, whatever. And to Living with FASD podcast@gmail.com. If you want to be in a community that is very healthy and supportive, there are 2 Facebook groups that I could recommend. One is Living with FASD Podcast, and the other is Flying High with Broken Wings, which is a very, very good group. So those would be those recommendations. If you want someone as a trainer, I do professional development training. I use the neurobehavioral model, which is from Facets, and I'm one of their certified facilitators. So I teach people about how to identify challenges, strengths, build accommodations. And I would be happy to do that for your community organization or what have you. Or if you want to coach, for parents of kiddos with FASD, or if you are a neurodivergent adult and have never methodically reviewed what are my strengths, what are my challenges, how do I go about creating accommodations so that life is more smooth, then, the links for all those different things is going to be in the show notes. So please feel free to reach out to me in that way. And have a wonderful week. And we'll see you next Monday for another episode of Living with FASD. Take care, everybody. Goodbye for now.